Welcome to episode 1, part 2 of Midwest Multifamily. I'm your host, Dante Tomasoni. Again, I'm here with Ryan Nelson. For those of you that are catching up, we have just finished our first ever podcast, which, nowadays everybody has a podcast. So I thought we'd do it. We are working through our kinks. We are working through our first couple episodes, and when you don't really know what you're doing, you just brand the heck out of it, right? And so I got my mug here, and I even brought my hat for this episode, so we're ready to go. It's P&R top to bottom, and we're gonna keep going on this story. So catching up for the audience, episode 1. Ryan, one of the founders of P&R, he told us the story about how he got going, the influences he had, the things that he went through, some of the lessons he learned. We talked about innovation being important. We talked about work ethic being important. We talked about just put the stickers on, which is making that leap into entrepreneurship. And we talked about how his values and his work ethic, and he shared that with a partner, and the two of them managed to start their own business. And so the two of them got together as both skilled tradesmen, plumbers, HVAC guys. They had experience building some multifamily, and they put stickers on their personal trucks. So this is a literal metaphor, if that's a thing. And I mean, is that an oxymoron? A literal metaphor? But and so they actually put stickers on their personal trucks. They started a business out of Pete's second bedroom and his personal garage. And that's where they put their first ever bookkeeper. And so where we're at in this story is that Ryan was just telling us is that now they've become one of these great shops, these plumbing and HVAC shops that are known for their efficiency, they're known for their skill, they're known for their speed, but they're having trouble breaking into that next level, the bigger jobs. So they keep continuing to get these multifamily jobs and doing a wonderful job of it. Their reputation is growing, but they're hitting the ceiling because they're having some bigger company risk mitigation questions where companies are looking at their books and going, "You guys just aren't big enough yet. You're not quite there. We hear good things about you. We like you, but we can't hire you because my risk mitigation guy, my insurance guy, he just doesn't think that you're big enough to handle this job." And so we're going to jump right back into that. We're going to ask Ryan, first question of the day is you talked about diving into the relationship building so that now you could build that trust with these bigger jobs. And let's talk about how you got there, how you started, how you did that relationship building.
Yeah, thanks. It was tough to get turned down, to do a big project because we knew we had it in us, and that's that. It really wasn't a worry for us, but it was just something that bigger companies do is they try to smoke out the problems before they start, and having a smaller company that isn't as financially stable as they'd like, that's a problem for them. So it could be a risk if we failed. So we just kept just pushing on what we were doing, being professionals and being the best at multifamily housing. And over time, we kept pushing on the relationships and doing smaller jobs. And we finally broke through the ceiling that people realized that we were the go-to guys or the go-to company in the area for multifamily housing. And, even outside of that, we had also grown to get liking by the ownerships of the companies, not just by the general contractors. And, over time, we've just gained so many relationships with the owners, not only the general contractors that are hiring us, but the owners actually, on their visits out to the job sites took liking to what we were doing and seeing that, we're elite at what we do. And they had done other jobs all over the country, and seeing what we were doing was definitely different than most others have done.
So When you talk about building those relationships and growing them, did it kind of happen naturally through the job site, or did you and Pete make this kind of intentional run at them, making phone calls? Did you see them on the job site and made sure one of you ran off to them? How do you think that worked, or did it kind of work naturally because of your product?
I think the product spoke mostly of it. It's just me and Pete definitely didn't do it. It was a whole team of us that did it. So it was a lot of us learning plus teaching our team, and then them teaching us some things. As we're in the office, they're out in the field, they're getting them to be better than we were. We're trying to push them to be better than we were, and then just finding that spot where you come back together and then take it to the next level together. So a lot of teamwork with our team out, putting the product in, us trying to make it better for the communications between the ownership and the general contractors and things like that.
So when you're on a job site, then at the time, is most of your communication through the general contractor, or how did you get to know the owners if the GC typically hires you?
Um, a lot of jobs, the owners are involved to a certain extent. I'd say minimally they're there at least once a month. A lot of owner operators are more involved than they'd be there once a week. So they would rely on us to, provide information to them that they need, and all different aspects. What happened as we went on is we seen that we were starting to provide value outside of our services. We were providing value to the job sites by being able to drive a schedule. That was like, if we weren't on the job, I feel like the schedule probably, would have been 10% less of what it was by the time we were done.
And there's a little bit of that as owning a company is, it's not necessarily cracking a whip, but making sure that, everybody's moving on step, right? And that was an important value, you guys, is that, everybody's giving everything at all the time, right?
Yeah, it's that, and it's just making sure you're making smart moves and, thinking about what could be better. Call it the next job or the next floor, being that we're working on multiple floors in these apartment houses. So it it's just about being able to make everything count that you do, and then also providing value to the rest of the trades, because you're actually teaching them, because some of them haven't been on a multifamily project before, and you're kind of coaching them along and telling them, this is what I've seen in the past and this is what we should do going forward. And most of them take it and learn from it. Some of them are a little resistant because you're kind of getting in their business, but it's everybody's business that's on the job site, and the only way to be successful is to have everybody working together.
Well, and we're going to be bringing this all to ultimately development and building itself. And so when I think about you saying something like that, the first thought that comes to my mind is exactly, we're all trying to get a building done together. But at these buildings, there's got to be a symmetry, right? I mean, the plumbing is, whether it's first, you got to, at certain times you must have to wait for the electricians, and the drywallers have to wait for you guys to get everything behind the wall. So I got to imagine that's pretty important.
Yeah, coordination's big. I mean, that's one of the most important things in the job is coordinating things. Ultimately, you put a schedule together that everybody executes on in order of how the schedule is put together. If the schedule is put together correctly at the beginning, then you get a good product at the end. If the schedule is put together and it's not redone at different milestones through the project to account for different things like weather and unforeseen things that you don't have control of, then you're not going to have a good job when it's done. So we just really pay attention to the job schedules, and we try to outperform that schedule. And then as we're usually the first ones in, the last ones out on the jobs from a mechanical aspect, that drives everybody else.
So that's what's so unique about that is now currently, you own you own a contracting company, a plumbing and heating company, and you self-perform about 85% of your build. So do you think the efficiency at which P&R operates when it builds its own buildings now, do you think that lesson kind of came from your earlier days when you were still just a plumbing and HVAC crew, knowing how that coordination works?
Yeah, I definitely think, it's the same formula driven throughout multiple companies now. And it just all goes back to, being innovative and learning and taking the next things that you learn to the next job or the next phase of the job.
And that's one thing that's been important. It's that innovation has always been a part of what you do. Refining your process has always been important in what you do, and making sure that we have the work ethic and the driving the schedule. Those are some things that I'm starting to hear that just they stick with you, and they're things that they're values that they're tenant values that you're not going to leave behind. And that's part of your company today, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, we at one time, you could say that we had 25 to 30 guys on a job site, call it on a 150 unit building. We could probably perform that job now with 15 to 20.
That's impressive. It's really impressive. So, all right, well, let's get back to that story now. Now you've broken through the ceiling. You're a plumbing and HVAC group that now is getting almost all the multifamily units in the Twin Ports. Do you remember what that number was? How many multifamily units you and Pete touched?
I don't. It's got to be over a couple thousand, but
I think we checked, and I'm looking off camera at somebody who knows this answer, but I'm pretty sure it's close to 3,000 units. Isn't that correct? That's impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really, really cool. And so you've been a part of, 3,000 units in the Twin Ports since like 2002. I think we went all the way back. 2010 we went back to. So 2010. And I mean, what a cool number, right? And so you're doing great. Like your company is taking off. Why real estate?
Well, it goes back to, when I was kind of talking about a lot of people had, they call it the owners or the general contractors, had started using us as a tool or a resource to make their jobs go better. And I think at sometimes maybe we were selected or negotiated with because we would be the driver of the schedule and we would be the ones that would always be trying to set the pace and make sure that, we had a good, clean, efficient job site for ourselves. And like I said, we're in first, we're out last. So that means that we're the pace setters and we're the ones that kind of set the job site up for that.
Okay, so that's a cool concept. Now that, I've never considered because I don't build these things. I don't have that experience like you do. But, for anybody who's thinking about getting into multifamily development themselves, that like say, hey, I'm going to hire a general contractor. I'm going to, I'll get the funds together and I want to build something. Or maybe for builders that are even doing it now and they're wondering where they're losing efficiency. Given that, the plumbing and HVAC team drives the schedule, like you said, what I tell people publicly is you got your experience because you were in there from the ground up and you're out there until the last tenant is kicking you out for fixing their sink, right? You're there in totality. And the way you're saying they're driving schedule, would you recommend to a builder to make sure like your plumbing and HVAC team on your job has to be great because they can affect everything else?
Yeah, I mean, of course I'd say that because that's kind of where I started.
Yeah,
I think
okay.
that's the most important part of the job. But it's either you're going to flood a building or you're going to burn it down. Anything outside of that, I don't think really happens to be catastrophic to a building. But you want to make sure that you're taking all the right steps throughout the process to have the protections in place so you don't have problems too. So it's not only about just being fast and efficient, it's also about being creative and trying to find ways that you're not going to have problems, and people that own the buildings aren't going to have these major problems 5 years down the road. So building these big buildings, there's a lot of movement in them throughout the life of them. So you need to take that into consideration when you're doing your work. And we've learned a lot. I mean, we've learned from our mistakes. We've learned from other people's mistakes. And we try not to forget anything that we've learned, and we try to carry it forward. So, we have a combined experience between, three of us on the plumbing and HVAC side that is probably 70 years of experience. So, it's hard to beat that.
It is.
And it's hard to keep that core group of people together to be able to keep delivering that product. So we've been able to do that till today, and that's part of the reason why we're successful in that.
And there's not typically a leadership role that's given to like one trade or the other on a job site. Does that either happen because it seemed to have happened organically with you guys? You were thinking, we're going to drive this. We're going to help you guys. If you want some advice, great. If not, we're going to give it to you anyway. And so is there one trade or another that naturally takes on that? Or is that just something that's driven by a project manager? Or
I would say that somebody that has a vested interest in the outcome of the job, it's going to be defined the most throughout the job who that is. I would say any job has that one company that's going to do that.
Mm-hmm. That could be the hungriest company, you think, like you guys were?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just like who puts in the most time and energy to have things be as successful as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And there's usually not multiple companies, which is good because it probably wouldn't be a good outcome to have that. But usually one will take the leadership role and share their experience and the education that they've gotten. And you kind of let the person or the people that have done the most kind of lead charge, and you take what you can out of that.
I mean, so there's a lesson for all the rookie builders out there, right? It's make sure, and this is no secret, all the leaders in our history and in business, all the books you can read, whether it's, Steve Jobs or whether it's Bezos, they all say surround yourself with good people. And I think what you're saying is your experience is that's no difference even on a job site. I mean, you want the good crews to kind of have a little bit of leadership, and you want to make sure you're hiring the right people, even if you get a general contractor. And that's cool. So just to hear the way you experienced how that kind of happens on the job site, most people don't see that. Most people don't, they're not in the hallways with you guys. They're not on those conversations. And so that's a great lesson, some great experience to, kind of lean on those leaders and find those hungry crews that are willing to be vested in the job. And so, all right, so back to this is taking off. You're sitting here, you have a plumbing and heating company, you have a contracting company, you self-perform about 85% of the job, you own 700 units in the Twin Ports. Let's get to that step between that. Plumbing and heating is doing great. You become the elite builder in this, or elite plumbing and HVAC crew in the company. What made you go from running a successful business that was doing a good job, starting to take off, to we need more now? We need to get into real estate.
I think it was always something that we had wanted to do, but just never had the ability to do. We had tried for multiple years, to get a bigger project going out of the ground, but we couldn't make it work. We didn't know enough. We had a lot of, call it like houses and duplexes and triplexes.
So you started investing in real estate early in smaller pieces, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, me and my wife personally started around 2008 buying houses and duplexes and fourplexes that were distressed. It was in that time in the market where there was a lot of foreclosures. There's a lot of frozen up homes. Pipes were busted in all the homes. Things like that. People were walking away from these houses and just letting them freeze up. So at that time, I'd always had a lot of interest myself in real estate, and it started all the way back from when I was 19 years old. I tried buying a contract for deed duplex from my aunt and uncle because I just admired what they were doing with real estate. Mm-hmm. They shot me down, but
come back when you have some credit, son.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they were thinking when I called them and asked them that, but it was a hard no right out of the gate. So, but then it took a few more years of being able to work and build up a little cash reserves and things that we could we could buy a distressed property, fix it up, and rent it out. So we had done that. Me and my wife had for a few years. Again, it was a lot of work. It was work all day and go work on them places all at night and on the weekends.
Luckily, you knew a good plumber.
Yeah. So I was able to do that. And at that time, it was more about just being able to take these places that were totally broken and bring them back to life and rent them out to people and see people living in them. And that was one of the best things ever.
So it had a fun factor to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Like I said, I don't know if this is going to be my theme, but I think real estate just always has a cool factor to it, right? Something that gets you here or something that gets you excited. So
that was the passion, then it was like, yeah, we're getting rent. That's great. But never really dove hard into the financials on the stuff. It was kind of like, I think we're getting enough rent right now. We're paying the bills. Things are good. We'll just do another building. It really wasn't that great. Like, the payback was just looking at it today. We definitely weren't paying enough attention to call it our costs versus what our rent was and things like that. But this just being able to turn them properties and put them back into the market was exciting. And then after that, we still had we had our business going at the time. So me and Pete had also started renovating properties and kind of doing the same thing, but the outcome was the same. Financials weren't the best on them. We were renting properties, we were fixing them up, making them look really nice, doing some flips, but we were worried about the work and not how they were performing financially. So
what were you bringing in these properties? You bringing a couple $100 a month over rent, $100 a month over rent?
Yeah, well, sometimes, like every project we did, we went over budget. So, so we were paying that back for a long time afterwards.
Sure, there's nobody out there that's done that, right?
Yeah. So, we learned a lot going through that process because it's hard to figure out where you're going to come out at the end. And then, once you go over budget, then you got to pay that back, over a shorter period of time usually. So it was more about the long game for real estate for us. And we knew that. And it wasn't like, we're not making any money. We're going to give up on this. It was more about what can we learn?
Mm-hmm. So, you got these properties and your long-term goal is there. We're going to hold these things. We're going to collect a couple $100 a month in rent in each one, but you're finding out it's real fast. It's taken long time to pay back the investment into bringing these things back up to speed, right? So at $100 a month, that's building up the bank account. Now somebody probably moves out.
Yeah.
How long does it take to fill it? And then you're feeding back the bank from that. So you kind of are at a spot where, I think most multifamily owners and developers were at one point, if they started in single family, when they realized like the numbers aren't great behind one door, were they?
No, they weren't. But, if I could roll it back and say, how would I do it over? I would definitely say that you need to get educated on what you're doing with multifamily, single family, flipping houses, whatever it is. Get education behind you before you do it, because your fails will cost you so much money that there's a good chance that you'll quit before you even get to the point where you're going to make it.
So you're saying the lesson here is if you could go back and grab younger you, it would have been do some research first?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'd probably bang my head off the wall doing real estate for 8 years before I started getting into podcasts and reading books and things like that. Reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Was that your first one?
It was my first one that really set me off in a direction that I had never been set off in before.
So was Rich Dad, Poor Dad pre P&R Plumbing and Heating, post P&R Plumbing and Heating? Where did that one come in?
It was well into the developments with P&R.
Okay.
Yeah.
You just got to look at the world a little differently.
Yeah. So we had just gotten to the point where we wanted to do a bigger development, multifamily, because we had done so many of them, and we had the know-how to do it from the ground up, like without any intimidation. So that's kind of what led us up to our first build. Our bigger build was a 24 unit apartment building. And that was in 2015.
And so how did you make that step? Now, did you have to sell any of the other properties to fund it? Did you, how did you go from these, these single doors, these 2 doors, these 3 doors, up to this one?
At that time, we didn't sell any to do that. That's really where I started the learning process of the financial side of things. Was I had to go to the bank and try to figure out, how do we get money for this place? And
what did the bank say?
The bank made me leave and go get educated a few times before I could figure out, how to make the numbers work for them. But I could say the first banker that I got was probably my worst nightmare, but ended up being my best friend.
Interesting.
Because when she took my file over on all my single family and duplexes and fourplexes, she was all over me. And I was like, this is a nightmare.
And by all over you, you mean, she didn't try anything fun.
Yeah.
But, no. She took to the financials, right?
Yeah. She was, she wanted to tidy things up. And, I was working in a plumbing business. I was doing real estate. On the side, I was fixing places up, doing all of the stuff, and just wasn't taking care of everything I should have, that the bank wants you to do.
So give me a good one-liner, something she hammered on you about. I mean, one of those things that made you go, oh, yeah, shit.
It was really just a bunch of things that added up. It was getting the budgets right, being able to figure out debt service coverage. That was the biggest thing, is just how do the banks are underwriting things, call it off of three components every time. And it was learning what them were and trying to figure out how we make it work, right?
Did you even know what debt service coverage was at the time? Yeah, not a clue, huh?
No, not a clue.
Yeah.
I'd bring stuff to the bank and they would say, yeah, this looks good. I think we can do this deal. So we'd do the deal and get done.
And that's the single family stuff, right?
Single family, duplexes, fourplexes. But when you're having to report your tax returns and things like that, you're not really reporting a lot. Mm-hmm. As long as you're making the debt payments on a smaller property, they're not too much in your business. When you start getting into the bigger properties, that's what they really care about, is being able to watch that every month to make sure you're doing your job.
So this banker, she gets a hold of this, and is she looking at your entire portfolio and saying, if you want to make this jump to multifamily, we got to straighten this stuff out. Is that kind of what I'm getting here?
Well, she kind of straightened me out more on the smaller properties before we got to the bigger properties. So at first we didn't have a good relationship because she was calling me, asking me for all this information. I didn't have time to get none of it to her. I was out working, doing whatever. I thought she was just trying to bury me. I'm like, this lady's out to get me. And she wasn't. She was just doing her job. Yeah. But she was also teaching me a lot at that point. And that got me to the point where she actually taught me how to put the first deal together.
Cool. So I love this. You got this relationship with the bank. She's helped you through a lot of this single family stuff. And you go, did you and Pete sit down? How did it happen? Did you go, let's just build an apartment building? We did the plumbing. Hell with it. Let's just do another apartment building.
Oh, we tried. So I think the first time we tried building an 11 unit apartment building. Okay. And this is with a different banker at the time. And they had just came back and said that it doesn't work. And we had no idea why it didn't work. It just didn't work. Oh. Had no clue. Mm-hmm. Zero education in what they were looking for. Just thought maybe things just that would never work. So we kind of quit at that time. This was on a piece of property that we had a purchase agreement on. but it was contingent on being able to build this building. So we had to give up on the purchase agreement and kind of let it go back to the realtor. About 6 months later, we're like, well, somehow these people got to make these numbers work.
Mm-hmm.
So we did a little more digging. And that's when I got with more involved with this banker that had taught me most of what I knew then about underwriting.
So did you sit down with her and she helped you with the spreadsheets and everything?
Yeah, she put a lot of it together. I mean, she asked for the information that was needed to be able to do the cost, provide, what it was going to cost. And then she, I'd said, where are we going to get with the rents? How many units is there going to be? What are the operational costs? What are the management costs? Things like that we had never tracked up, up until then, just because we didn't know.
You guys were doers.
Yeah. We were just like, we're just going to deliver this awesome product, and the things just
put stickers on the truck, man.
Things are going to work. And that wasn't how it went, but we got it. We finally got to a point that we're able to buy the same property that we got turned down on the first time, but now we're going to put a 24 unit development there.
Okay. And
the numbers worked on it this time. It was still risky because we were setting the bar for the rents in the town.
Yeah. So you're coming in highest rents. Is anybody else building new multifamily in Superior at the time?
At that time, nobody. I don't think anybody built a market rate apartment building in this town within an elevator ever.
Wow. So now we're in Superior. Everything you've built is in Duluth, right? I mean, not that you've built for your own portfolio, but for others' portfolios.
Yeah, we had done a, call it 150, 200 units in Superior before that.
Oh, you had, okay.
On the mechanical side.
Gotcha. So at least you knew the town, you knew that these buildings are doing okay, so that helps. And so, for our listeners, I talked about this a little bit in the first episode. The risk Ryan was taking is part passion. You grew up in Superior, you love this place, you'd done, this was your town, right? And then there's this economic dichotomy between Duluth as the tourist town and the pretty thing up on the hill, and then Superior is a little more industrial. And so what I love about this is Ryan had, not only did he have passion for his own town, but he had faith in it. And you had this relationship you had built with this banker who helped you through this. And you didn't know it at the time. You were just trying to get loans for small doors, but this relationship ended up blossoming into something where, she was essentially your first she wasn't an underwriter, but she was kind of your first, almost internal financial analysis. I mean, she gave you, that's a value that you get out of a good partner.
She was my first mentor. I didn't know it at the time, but I know it today. And, I was lucky enough that she was the hardest banker I've ever dealt with till today. And I've been told by many others that she is the toughest.
Yeah,
so
that's cool.
Out of the gate, I got lucky. I mean, I got to deal with the hardest, the best in the business around here.
I always say that I like to feel blessed for the good moments that happen in my life, and there's definitely a part of luck that happens to you. I also, another dichotomy in my life is I like that luck is when hard work meets opportunity. And that's definitely what seemed to happen to you guys today, because I mean, nobody can argue how hard you guys were working, and then you had the opportunity, and it just so happened you got this hard-nosed banker that whipped you guys into shape. So that's a lot of fun. And so what was the name of the first building?
Village Apartments.
Village Apartments, 24 units. What do the units look like?
They're average, right around 700 square feet. Mostly one bedrooms. There's a couple 2 bedrooms in there, but all similar units, 3 stories, slab on grade with off-street parking.
And the coolest new elevator in the Twin Ports.
Yeah.
Okay. And so now, I mean, how does it happen? That's what people want to hear. People want, I think, and I do too. How is the sausage made? You and Pete are sitting there going, God, we're busy. We have these duplexes we're remodeling. We're running a plumbing and heating business. I'm And your wife's an entrepreneur as well. She owns a restaurant, and so you sit here and you go, why not do something else too? This, I mean, it's not like we don't have enough on our plate, and and we're gonna build this. So tell me how it goes with your partner, who is, you're both working really hard. You're both sitting there, and you're like, Pete, you know what? I think we should invest. How much did the village cost?
Uh, 2.5 million.
$2.5 million. Hey Pete, I got a $2.5 million idea. Let's just build this apartment building, and we have no idea if anybody's going to fill it, right? So, I mean, you probably had a good sense. And let's get to that too. How did you have kind of the confidence that it was going to fill, or was it another just put the stickers on the truck moment?
It wasn't. The research. If we were to do research and try to use research and use numbers to back us up to say that this was going to be successful, that wouldn't have worked. It was really risk, and a lot of people that are developers wouldn't take that risk still today, even if they heard this story. It's just some people won't invest in communities that don't provide the numbers that they need.
Mm-hmm.
And that's smart, but on the flip side of it, the more the risk, the more opportunity in a lot of cases. So we had done a lot of good things with our plumbing company, and the people that worked for us got us to where we were and got us to where we are today. What we did was we leveraged that and decided to find a way to stabilize our company as a whole better, not have the ebbs and flows, and try to draw a flat line within our companies. And that was to provide some other source of income.
Okay.
So that was the main reason why we wanted to do it, was we wanted to drive more business income in other fashions other than just going out and bidding jobs. And we wanted something that grew behind us. We would finish a job, we go to the next job. It starts over every single time. Multifamily and real estate, that's not the case. You build. And so does everything with it. Real estate has just always proven to be that.
That's a great way to look at things in multifamily and real estate as developers, because somebody might think of it the other way. Just like you said, you build and you're done. You build and you're done. But if you're developing your own portfolio, it's actually getting bigger as it goes along the way. I mean, that's a great thing to learn. That's cool to think about it like that. Now your company's truly growing. It's just not going job to job to job, because you got these multiple aspects. And now you've diversified your portfolio, which not only are you building these things, but you're owning them and they're generating money. At the time, did you know about depreciation?
I didn't know anything about that at that time, no. And my accountant at that time didn't know much about it either. So
maybe that's why they call it bonus depreciation, right?
We were
you didn't know you're going to get it until the end.
We still didn't know anything about it at the end of that project. And, it was a little while before we'd start learning about that aspect of the business. But, what got us, like I said, what got us into being able to do that first development was the team that we worked with up until then, and our relationships with all of the good subcontractors in the Twin Ports. I mean, we had the best guys. We put the best guys on our job, and it was a reflection of success. I mean, that was the success, was we knew we worked with all the best people, and we've carried them with us throughout the process, and they've been happy to be there for us.
I mean, you echo one of the best lessons in business school, which is, surround yourself with the best people and keep them with you and take care of them. And that's cool. And so as we kind of wrap up here, this is where it gets cool, is the story is how many units have you built for your own portfolio as of date?
I think we're right around 650 today.
650.
Yeah.
And how many years?
Since 2015, so 8 years.
7 years, almost 100 units a year you've now constructed, and almost all of them in the Twin Ports. What does the next couple of years look like for you?
Yeah, and all of them are ground up construction.
Ground up construction.
No
self-performed about 85%, right?
Yes.
Yep. And so it's important to clarify. have not acquired a single building. You've built all of them from the ground. That's impressive. That's cool. And so, what does the next couple of years look like? Just a short summary.
Well, I think the next couple of years are probably cloudier than any other years that we've faced, just with the economic challenges of today's market. But really, we're going to fall back on our work ethics. We're going to fall back on our ability to be innovative and find ways to make jobs happen in communities that need them to happen.
When I say the future, what's like the number that you're looking at in the next couple of years for P&R?
I think realistically right now, I could say within the next 3 years that we got 500 units to put online.
That's cool. I mean, and as we're coming to the end of episode 1, part 2, I mean, the hair on my arms is kind of standing up because here you were underneath a mechanical truck deciding literally that you don't like dead animals falling on your head, and now you have, in the last 7 years, you're averaging constructing yourself not all by yourself, you had some help, but 700 units. And now in the next 3 years, you're going to match that with another 5. I mean, that's cool. That's the story. And for the listeners, that's why we wanted to bring that story to you. And that's why I personally, working for these guys, with these guys, I think it's an awesome story. I think we have something to share with you, and I can't wait to share more in the upcoming episodes. The lessons, the work ethic, the values, the things that P&R implements in its daily values to help you move forward. And I know Ryan's here, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more in the episode because he's got these values that he wants to deliver, and he knows that these are the keys to his success and how they can help others. Okay, I want to thank everyone for joining. That is the end of episode 1, part 2 of Midwest Multifamily. Thank you for being here. We can't wait to join you in another episode.
Thank you.